Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar Wednesday for May. I'm excited to see like 45 people in here. That's exciting. We have a lot of support staff and agents, and that makes me happy. And summer's around the corner, and that means that fair season and achievement days are right on our heels. So thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. This will be the last one before we come back in September, because we'll take our summers off. So we'll come back in September. And just a commercial, if you have ideas for webinars, let me know. I know I've gotten a few ideas from um, Leanne's latte meetings that she has on Wednesday. So thanks for sharing with her. She passes them on to me. But if you want to share with me, that's great as well. I'm always looking for ideas. So I'm going to turn this over to Sam. She's going to be talking about preparing for county fairs and achievement days. Samantha?
All right. Thanks, Megan. We'll go over a few things that I want to talk about today. But first, we can acknowledge how absolutely exciting it is that we're coming into another fair season. At the same time, knowing that no matter how many years you do this, there is always some fears. It just happens that we think everything can go perfectly, and sometimes it just doesn't. So we know we're ready for that. So we're going to try this poll. It's a new program that I haven't worked with before, but I really want to see if it works. So I would love it if you can use like your cell phone and just go ahead and take the little poll. It's going to create a word cloud for us. And I just want to know, what's your biggest fear around county fair? And you can put in as many as you'd like, because it may be hard to limit yourself to one.
I think for me, it's just not knowing, this being my first time, what lies ahead. And I think even if you have done it, it's maybe different every year.
Absolutely. All right. We will come back to these as we start hopefully checking off some of these things and put some of these at ease or at rest in your mind. If at any point today you have questions or something doesn't sound right, please unmute, throw it in the chat box. I want this to be just a super open conversation so that it covers everything that you need. So the first thing we're going to go through a little bit, and this is kind of a checklist if you're very new, or if maybe you have some newer staff coming into your office this year, it's going to be a new transition year for you, is finding out and placing what actually our roles are when it comes to County Fair and Achievement Day, because they look vastly different in every county. If you have a 4-H agent in your county, more than likely they're taking lead on a lot of this. But maybe as an ag agent, you are handling all of the agronomy and the livestock shows or the pet show. Maybe it's your responsibility to work with the fair board to secure some of the fundraising events that are taking place, but finding out kind of what that role is. So the first question you can ask as you're figuring out that role is, who can I ask to clarify my role for me? It may be someone else in your office that's going to share what the person previous to you was working on or had done. It may be your district director, or you can always feel free to call like Megan or Leanne or myself, and we can help you walk through that on kind of how it's divvied up or what that may look like for your county in particular. Then the question of, is this part of my job? So every once in a while, you'll come across a task that you may think in your own mind of, how on earth is this relevant to my job? Or is this something that I should be working on during county fair? I've had educators that have come to me and said, okay, I learned that the person previous to me helped organize who worked what shifts in the beer garden. Is that something that's required of my job? And then we have to work on how we maybe remove some of those tasks or transition those into something that's more relevant to your position or more relevant to youth development as a whole, while still maintaining those partnerships. So we don't give you permission to go, oh, absolutely not, that's not my role, but how can we still help, but make sure that your time is being used most valuably? And then who can help me with this or provide more information? Again, it can be your 4-H councils or your federations, fair board members, other people that work in your office, our admin assistants in our offices. I swear they know more about our job sometimes than we do, and can give you all sorts of history of who's done what and where, and also your neighboring counties or your mentor that was assigned when you first joined. I think there's a camaraderie with NDSU that's super unique, and that I think every agent wants to help out the other agents. So if you call with a question, never feel like you're asking something dumb. And then, of course, the last one that we kind of have to come to grips with is, am I actually in charge? And the answer is, for the most part, yes. With our 4-H program, you are kind of the head lead. And so that may look slightly differently, but it still does put you in a role where you are very much in charge of the program and part of that leadership team that's moving that forward. So once you've established what your role actually is, these are some of the things we're going to go through today. So we're going to go through running ID reports in 4-H online. I did this last year on the same webinar, and there was a ton of questions because it was very new that we were utilizing 4-H online for animal identification last year. This is only our second year, so I want to briefly go through that again and do a refresh. And then if you have very specific questions on those online reports, I'll stay on a little bit later after the webinar and we can go through it step by step by step, and I can help you to make sure you understand how that works and we can get through that logistically. We're going to talk about check-in processes. And these, I'm going to use most of my examples based towards livestock, but certainly a lot of these check-in processes can also be used in our static divisions or our living exhibits. So again, if you have great info or if you found something that really works well in your county, please feel free to unmute, raise the hand, throw it in the chat so that a lot of you have expertise I certainly don't. And I want to make sure we share that today. And then we're going to talk a little bit about structuring species and class order as it pertains to livestock. Just because I've found if you are new and you make a change where a change is not wanted or asked for, sometimes that can be kind of a hidden landmine. So I want to help you navigate those so that that's one of the things you don't have to worry about during your County Fair Achievement Day. Then we're going to go on to answering questions like, I know I need volunteers, but what will they actually be doing and how many do I actually need? How do I figure that out? And then finally, we're going to go through just a few of the oh no's, those deep lasting fears of the things that we just can't quite prepare for ahead of time that will come up. How do we navigate those and work through them? So for those of you that aren't new, or maybe you grew up in 4-H, you know that this is a pretty big deal. If you haven't grown up with 4-H, maybe you were a part of a different competitive event or program when you were younger. In our minds, when we step into these roles, we go, okay, county fair, it's just a few days a year. Why is there so much tension? Why do we feel so much pressure around these few days a year? And that's kind of the answer to that same question. Exactly. It's only a few days of the year, and everything is bundled into that one time frame. So if you are a Timberwolves fan, like I am, we are getting very close to this like county fair season of it's all on the line. If you lose, you go home. If you win, you get eternal glory, at least for the next 12 months before county fair rolls around next year. But it's a huge deal to these kids, and in turn, it's a huge deal to their parents. And so sometimes we get these things that we have to work through of either angry or upset families or just highly stressed families. I always like to say during county fair, we're going to see them at their absolute best and sometimes at their absolute worst. But if we remember that this is such a huge deal to them, we can kind of understand or at least give a little empathy into how they're feeling and kind of why they're reacting the way they are. So one way to mitigate a lot of stress for 4-H families is having a really smooth check-in process. And so 4-H Online is going to be your best friend in regards to setting up these reports for your families. So in 4-H Online, you can create custom reports. And these custom reports allow you to select exactly what information you want and you don't want. So you can get rid of that member number that we've never used in our lifetimes. You can get rid of their street address or what township they live in, so you can take out that information. And then you can select things like, I need to know the number of rabbits, the breed of the rabbits that are coming, maybe how many stalls I need to plan for. You can do that through these custom reports. The other thing that it's going to help when you build these custom reports is your animal identification. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment here and reshare one of my other. Oh, that's how I have to do that. There we go. This document here. So if you are a livestock person, this will make complete sense. There's nothing crazy about it. You know what all this means. If you are not, this is a little bit tricky. So I just wanted to step through a few things for you. So this sheet is in the premium book in full, in one full page. It's also in the digital copy of the premium book in our Google Drive, and it's a separate document in the Google Drive. If part of your role is that you will be answering any question ever about what do I need for identification or what's required to bring my animal to County Fair Achievement Day, please, please, please print this sheet, laminate it, stick it somewhere on your desk. Because it was built so that all of the crazy information is all in one place, as simplified as our team could possibly make it. So what it is let's say we have a 4-H'er call in and they really want to show a market weather in the goat project. This document, when they say, okay, I want to bring a market weather, what do I have to have? Well, we can share the required minimum and maximum weight, because that's on this document, just going across. When they had to have been born by, and then the ID information that is required. So it says ewes and rams need an official Scrapies ID tattoo or a Scrapies tag. Wethers require an ear tag. It's not required to be Scrapies. And they have to be entered in 4-H Online. So if they're bringing this market wether, they've got to be at least 40 pounds, no more than 110, born after December 1st, and it says they need an ear tag or a tattoo. And so I hope that this works for you to be able to go straight across and give really easy answers to the families. We always had this information, but it was in a lot of different places within our species documents. So now it's just kind of all in one spot for you. The other thing that's really important to remember with this document is that it also meets all of our Board of Animal Health requirements. So while 4-H doesn't necessarily have a requirement that a Scrapies tag has to be entered, Board of Animal Health does. If an animal is going to be commingled, or a goat or a sheep, yep, it needs that Scrapies tag. So it's included in here so that none of our families will ever run into the situation where, yes, they meet 4-H requirements, but maybe they don't meet Board of Animal Health. So when they arrive at State Fair, they're not going to have any problems. You can find this, so it's in the Google, so it's in the State Fair Premium book, which is in the State Fair folder in the Google Drive. It's also separated out as its own document in staff resources and in the state fair section in those folders in the Google Drive. And I can drop a direct link here for you. Hopefully that works. All right. Now we'll go back here. All right. So once we know what those animals need, we can identify anything that's missing. The most stressful situations I've dealt with in regards to livestock families at county fairs and achievement days is when they arrive and we are missing an ear tag, or we don't have the right veterinary paperwork, or a tattoo doesn't match what they originally put in. So if we can find those out ahead of time and fix those right off the bat, oh, makes life so much easier and so much smoother. So what you're going to do is run these official reports so that you in the office with a few volunteers, which we'll talk about again in a little bit, can go through and find some of these like blatant errors that can easily be fixed and changed before we get to county fair. So when you run one of these 4-H Online reports, which you build in the custom reports section of 4-H Online, this is one that I have in my folder that automatically populates for me. So as we can see, I did it with a couple of different species so I could see what this report would look like. And when you download it to Excel, this is what you'll get. So if I look in my meat or my goat section, I have a market goat, I have some meat and dairy goats, I have horses in here, I have some breeding rabbits, I have swine. So I can look through here and see just some blatant errors or things that go, oh no, we are missing. So I have a horse in this, oops. I have a couple of horses that I don't have any colors or markings for. That would be really nice to have, and it's one of those things we ask for in 4-H Online. When I go down to my breeding, I can look through and notice, oh, okay, yep, we have all of our ear notches, we have all of our tags. If I go into my beef, it's kind of the same thing. Some of the things that you'll pick up on right away when you're going through these reports, if we have any pig people on here, it'll say something like, okay, I have a breed and it's a Chester White. And then in the description, they say it's red in color. Well, if you're an animal science person, right away that triggers a red flag of, oops, I think they might have made a mistake. Let's get that corrected. Which goes the fact that if you are not an expert in livestock, you don't have to become one. I don't want you to go home and cram with all the quiz bowl material to try to become a livestock expert. This is what some of our volunteers would absolutely love to help with. So if you have people like your superintendents that are doing check-ins or that are helping with stalling, bringing them in after that May 15th deadline, you can run your report, remove the 4-H'er name off of one side, hand them a highlighter and say, hey, can you look at these and see if anything seems really odd or if we're missing anything? And then it can be those quick emails to the families going, hey, an ear tag is required for swine. I see that we didn't have a number in there. Can I get that number for you? I can put it in and take care of it. And that really helps lighten the load when you get to county fair, that you're not dealing with all of these changes when they first get there. They're all done ahead of time. So I've used the words check-in a lot, and I know that check-ins look very different across all of our counties. Just like a quick drop in the chat, do you have a check-in process for animals or static at your county fair or both? Some semi-formal system for how you know who's there, who isn't there. Okay, both, good deal. Both, awesome. Good deal. Okay, more formal for static, pretty informal for our livestock. All right. Like I said, it's very different across which counties you have. If you have a larger county, I highly, highly recommend you have some form of kind of a formal check-in process for livestock. If you're a smaller county, maybe it is a little bit easier to be a little bit more informal. But we'll just go through some of the things that you'll do during a livestock check-in process. So if you don't have one, or maybe you haven't done it before, but your county keeps talking about it, you may kind of recognize what it is. So what are we actually checking in? During a check-in process, you're verifying the animal's ID. That's one of the first things you're doing. So we're going with that same information that you did in that 4-H online report that you can run again right before fair, hand off to your superintendents, and they can double check. And we ask that these are double checked, one, to make sure they are the animals that they originally registered and enrolled in our program. But more importantly, if they want to go on to something like state fair, or if we're moving horse from county to county for those qualifying shows, then we're making sure we're kind of attached to the right animal so that we don't have any issues when they go to a later event or a later program. The other thing they're helping with during this check-in process is they're finalizing your show program for you. So many people put together a program for their show, love to list the kids' names or what specific project they're in or what animal they're showing, because grandma and grandpa want to be up in the stands and know exactly what class their grandkid is coming in for, so they know if they have time to go get another corn dog or a hot dog or whatever it is before coming back, so they don't miss anybody. You can identify all your drops, or if you do have any ads, things like that that you need to take care of, you can verify that during the check-in process. And then any veterinary information. So things like those Pelorum papers, those statement of origins. Some counties require that those come in ahead of time. Others in the counties that I've primarily worked with, the families brought those with to the check-in process. So when they arrived, they handed them off. We looked at them, put them in a folder, and we're good to go for the Board of Animal Health. So any way you do that, when you do your check-in process, you need to provide something to your volunteers other than a clipboard and blank sheets of paper. So I highly recommend that's those 4-H online reports or those fair entry reports. And so you can run reports in both. I tend to like the 4-H online ones a little bit better, just because when the changes need to be made, if there are changes with any of the animals, you as staff will make those changes in 4-H online. So it's just a little bit easier for me to work within the same program of, I'm working with 4-H online reports, I'm going to make the changes in 4-H online, because that will sync through fair entry so the right information keeps going forward. And then what does a good check-in process actually look like? Well, it can look very, very different. So we're going to go through one just kind of basic way that you can do a check-in process if you're looking to do something a little bit more formal or just a little bit more structured. So this is the check-in process that I just happened to use when I was in a county. Again, certainly there are tons of ways that you can update or change, but this is just kind of the basic one that we followed. So we directed all the families to come in through gate A. At checkpoint B, we had a table set up where our veterinarian was, or our vet check person, that would just do super quick, like skin condition checks. We also had a lot of horses coming in, sometimes from another country, because we were up there on the border. So they were able to verify that and take care of those things really quickly. And then we also were able to collect any drops or ads. So when family rolled in and they typically register 8 steers, we could verify, do you actually have 8 in there? Do you only have 6? What are we kind of expecting? And then at that C checkpoint, then we got all those papers. So any sort of paper that we needed, we verified what class the animal was going to be entered into. Sometimes we know in the haste of trying to put animals in, we maybe accidentally put a wrong birth month or the wrong birth date or wrong year. We can get those corrected right off the bat. So these were all corrected on our entry day, and then they were allowed to go back into the barns and unload. So in this particular process, there was no unloading until everybody had gone through the checkpoint, so we didn't have to track families back down in the barns. And we also knew that we had all of our paperwork in order, because Board of Animal Health liked to pop in every once in a while to the fair. I worked with a county in Minnesota that Board of Animal Health did a surprise inspection every single fair. So it wasn't quite a surprise any longer, but they had one file folder then from this check-in that they could just hand off that whole file folder to Board of Animal Health when they came, so that they could help, easily flip through those, make sure everything was good to go before they carried forward. But again, some counties choose to do them at different times, so different species have different check-in times, or they do the check-ins along with their weigh-in processes. Those are all completely fine. We all end up at the same end goal. So just find out what fits best for your county and maybe what the families prefer, or what helps you as a staff, so that you're not trying to be in 20 different places at one time. I saw. Ooh, Crystal has a question. If they are showing a purebred animal, do they need to update and bring their registration papers fair? Oh, upload their papers. Okay. Excellent question. So if they are bringing a registered animal to the fair, they can upload their papers into 4-H online. I always highly encourage that the families have their paperwork, just in the event that we need to double check something. But if a family doesn't have their papers, you can always find them in 4-H online. They don't disappear. So they'll be there from year to year to year. When they come to the state fair, we do ask that they have a physical copy, so it can be an original or a copy of their papers. Or if they can pull them up online, that's usually okay too. Our superintendents are there at the check-in process to verify registration numbers and ownership and things like that. So if you have a ton of registered animals coming to your county fair, maybe it's easier to just verify them in 4-H online ahead of time. But if you have only a couple, maybe it's nicer to have them actually bring their papers in hand. So either way is totally fine. So next we're gonna slide in a little bit on show and class orders. So things to think about and this may be targeted a little bit more towards those that don't have as much livestock experience. So for those of you that have a ton of livestock experience, again, feel free to unmute, contribute, call out, oh, don't do this, I did this my first year, or don't forget about something. Some of the things we want to think about when we're going down the list, first and foremost, we are youth people. So we have to think about the exhibitors first. And so I had to work with a county fair once that the fair board was determined that if we started at 6:45 a.m. with the pig show, we could be done by 11:30 p.m. with the last of the species. And we could do all the species in one day. And we really had to work through how that wasn't positive youth development, and how they were just really, really exhausted. And it's tough to hire judges for something like that. It's really tough on the families. So working through what can we do for our exhibitors that gives them ample time to breathe, and actually enjoy some of the aspects of the county fair and the achievement days. Thinking about our judges, I spend quite a bit of time of judging in the summer, and there are certainly fairs that I put at the top of my list that I want to go back to. And those are usually like they provided me a break or two, or a lunch break, or a few minutes in between different species so I could kind of regroup, switch my mind off of sheep and move into swine. And then those that ask for, can you judge absolutely everything? And I know that's really nice when we're staff that we only have to coordinate with one judge. But it is really tough on judges, because we don't feel like experts in everything. So there's definitely a few species that I know I can do a really nice job for our young people. But there are a couple that I would really prefer not to, because I know I'm not quite good enough to be in the ring with those kids and in that species. And so every once in a while, it's kind of okay if we ask our judges to do that extra piece. But just know that they may not be 100% comfortable in judging absolutely everything. So just kind of keeping them in mind as you're structuring your shows. Biosecurity, of course, we know that certain diseases spread between certain species of animals. And so we want to either keep them together so that we can clean in between those shows or outside of those areas, or keep them separated out so we know that they're not going to cross contaminate or run back and forth. The schedule as a whole, yes, we are 4-H and we tend to be separate from our fair boards, but our fair boards are amazing partners with us. And so we need to make sure that when we're scheduling things or we want to make some changes in our schedule, that they're at least at the table with us in some of those conversations. In the county I worked at when I was in Pembina for a number of years, we still had chuck wagon and chariot races. And they are the biggest thing in the county that kind of happens all year. And so when we were looking at moving around our premium sale, one of the main factors was to make sure we gave some of our older 4-Hers enough time to go through the premium sale, enjoy it, recognize their buyers, and then get over to that grandstand. And so there are times that we just want to make sure that we're being courteous to all the organizations and partners that we have in that. And then, of course, tradition. Some counties, absolutely the first thing that's shown in the morning has to be beef. And in some counties, you want to put swine last because it's kind of the dirtiest or it's the toughest to pick up afterwards, and those pigs are going to tear up that arena. But families are really tied to the fact that they really want swine early in the morning when it's super cool outside. And so just making sure that you're still kind of honoring those traditions in ways that the families don't feel like it's being completely changed or a rug pulled out from under them. But that we can still address the 4 things above them that should take a little bit more priority. So some of the parameters that you may not think about readily, but you can easily look at ahead of time or after you finish county fair this year, looking through and seeing, oh, okay, I need to think about that for next year. What if your county has rabbit showmen that also show horse? Should the shows be closer together because they want them all on one day, or do we need to make sure we give ample time between those shows or make sure they're never crossing over so they're not trying to run back and forth between bunny and horse and bunny and horse and run barrels and then sprint back for showmanship? If I have a judge that is going to judge meat goats, and dairy for me, am I requiring them to stay 3 days because each show is on a different day? Are the shows on the same day so they can go in and out? Is that too much? Just something to consider. The poultry barn is the furthest from the arena. Okay, if we're going to show birds in the arena, we need to make sure we plan for ample time so that they can go back and forth between that barn and the arena. Or do we need to look at having the show closer to the arena? Just some considerations. I think every year at our county fairs, somebody gets hit during the heat wave. Remembering that it's always the hottest, usually right around noon when that sun is directly overhead. So if it's going to be 95 degrees at noon and the heat index is going to be 101, you know what we don't show at noon? Rabbits and pigs. Absolutely not. And so that you're looking at some of those things and just keeping those in the back of your mind. And if you have a public that absolutely loves the beef show, it's the biggest thing in the world. How do we schedule that so the majority of the public can make it? Do we schedule it for, at the end of the fair towards a Saturday and have to move things around? Or is it just something we make sure we schedule in the afternoon so maybe more people attend either right away after work or take off a little time to attend? So this is just a quick brief reminder. I'm sure almost all of you know exactly what this is or how this works, but I just wanted to touch base on it in case you're brand new. Understanding some of these crazy terminology that we use in 4-H and in livestock shows in general. So like a best of show, a champion drive, a class winner, what on earth is this, and help us make it make sense. And so in 4-H, we use the Dutch system for ribbons, which means that every 4-H'er receives a ribbon in either that blue, red, or white category to help them understand where they're at with their learning experience. So in this kind of column A, this is all of those classes that we have. So when you look at that premium book and you see that there are 5 heifer classes, you know that those are kind of some of the smallest breakdowns for those classes. And so typically, even though members are going to receive a blue, red, or white, they're also ranked first through whatever's needed. So maybe 1st through 10th or 1st through 5th, but they are ranked within that class. The next thing that happens is we pull those first place animals out, and those first place animals then go in for those kind of champion drives, as we call them, or grand drives. And so that's typically like type animals. So one thing we talked about when I was with a group in Williston on Monday that was fantastic and asked a lot of amazing questions is, how do you know what goes together in order to make a champion drive? Will my champion drive consist of all 5 of the heifer classes and then 2 steer classes and a cow-calf class? Each county typically does those a tiny bit different, but there are kind of some set guides. And so I want to make sure that if you're thinking that something may be off with the way you've got your classes structured, or if you just have questions about, hey, is there any way we can make this better? Or does this seem like we're on the right path? Feel free to give me a call. We can set up a quick chat or a meeting, or you can send me kind of your award structure, and we can look through it together and go, oh, okay, yes, this definitely makes sense. You're A-okay, everything looks great. Or, oh, this is a little odd if we've got the chicken and the ducks and the turkeys going in for a champion market. And so we can work through those together on a county by county basis. But just kind of, I know staff have asked for this in the past to kind of see a progression of how this actually works. So. All right, volunteers. We're going to do a 2-minute drill. And in this 2 minutes, I'd like you to write down everything or every possible volunteer position you need at your county fair that you can just think of off the top of your head. So we'll go exactly at 11:40. We'll see how many you can get down. It could be livestock, static, food booth, ticket takers, building watchers. See how many you can come up with. You got about 1 minute left. All right. Can drop in the chat, or I'd love for somebody to unmute so I know I'm not still here all by myself and alone. And just rattle off some of the ones you thought of right off the bat.
I went and counted my volunteer / parent sign up for my fair.
Oh,
and
okay.
I need 63 people for my small county.
Okay, 63 different people or 63 positions to fill?
There's 63 positions, so sometimes parents like will do multiple. Like they'll do 2 time slots of like ribbons or 2 time slots of gate.
Okay,
Or like they take photos at the horse show and then do something else.
gotcha. Okay. Anybody else? What'd you come up with? What were some of the odd things you suddenly remembered you need a volunteer for?
Serving food at the premium sale. Those are the ones you don't think about.
There you go. Yeah. So some of the ones when I made myself go through it, okay, my ring stewards, that's an easy one. I need an announcer. I need a recorder at the fair. I always forget that I need a judge's assistant, somebody that's going to run and grab like bottles of water for the judge when it's 95 degrees out. I typically always forget that I need someone to hand out ribbons. Just because my county didn't necessarily have a really strong ambassador program, so that wasn't like an automatic go-to. So suddenly the first class would be in the ring and we went, oh no, who's gonna quick hand out the ribbons? And so you're running back and forth in the table to do that. I really like, as a showman and as a judge, a fairly clean arena or a ring. So maybe having a pooper scooper on hand along with those ring stewards or giving those up. Whoever's going to line up my classes outside of the ring itself, behind the scenes, who's going to make sure that gate is open or closed when need be, and then who's going to be that runner. So some of you will have fairs that are really tight on schedule and you have a premium sale to prepare for, so those results need to hurry up and get back to your fair office or your exhibit building where that's being housed so they can be entered on time. And so I highly recommend make a list of all of those things so you have an awesome list like Monica's of this is where I need all of these people, and then how am I going to utilize them. And make sure when you're thinking about those volunteers and the roles that you're just not sure how you're going to fill, that you think kind of outside of that week or those days of Achievement Day or county fair. So volunteers to look at those 4-H online reports and help clean up animal ID prior to county fair. After county fair, I don't want you all to end up being out there cleaning chicken pens all by yourself. Because everybody's exhausted and has already gone home. So how can you still line those up for post-fair stuff, moving projects to the state fair? Then who's going to go out and get the projects from the state fair and bring them home? Where are they going to be housed? How are they organized so families can pick them up? And so when you're making those volunteer lists, make sure you think outside of the immediate vicinity of that county fair for just those short days. So we're going to talk about the oh-nos, and I'm going to see if this worked. Fingers crossed. Perfect. It worked. Hooray. Thank you. Okay. Greatest fears for county fairs. Here we go. Judges not showing up. Yes, that is a horrifying fear. Drops. Yes, when you get lots of those drops. Angry fair boards, angry parents. I see parents was a big one. That one's highlighted fairly high. Unmet expectations. Yeah, not knowing everything. I promise you, you will never know everything. But you're always going to know enough to be able to handle a situation. I promise. We don't give ourselves near enough credit. The unknown, being a newbie, 4-H moms, your child's behavior, biosecurity guidelines, missing registrations, uncertainty, fair entry. Make sure you're bugging Diane constantly. I saw her on this webinar. She'll help you with anything fair entry you need, so don't worry. She's not too scary, so make sure you reach out to her. Those incidentals, hurt feelings, absolutely making a massive mistake. All right, so I am glad you shared those with me. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm going to catch up on chat here quick. Okay. Ooh, good one, Annette, for a volunteer needed, a drop project runner at Statics. Absolutely. So the first step, and of course, It's the first step, but it's the most difficult to overcome is when the oh no's happen, don't panic. I like to run disaster simulations. I actually find those quite fun. If you are a Parks and Rec watcher, when that was on, Leslie Knope with like the 20 binders of if there's a tornado and the tornado starts a fire and then the fire turns into a snowstorm, like what happens then? That's the kind of planning I do because I actually thoroughly enjoy that and I like being tested on it. And so I like to run simulations, and one of the ones I've done is it's a bird, it's a plane, it's brucellosis. And so how do we walk through some of these gigantic fears of things that happen? Because you can do this, I promise that you can. So the first thing we want to remember is when these disasters happen is one, to take a step back and stay calm. A lot of times we put pressure on ourselves to feel like when an oh no is brought to us, we have to respond immediately. They need us to respond immediately. They need us to respond and they need our help. But give yourself some credit. No one's expecting immediate changes. A lot of times we just put that pressure on ourselves because we feel that that's what we need to do. But I promise if somebody comes to you with a deceased animal or an injury, they're not looking at you to save the day in that moment. If you say, okay, I need to call this person, and this person, they're going to understand that. And so being ready for these things, there's a lot of things you can do ahead of time, even though you have no idea what those oh no's or those disasters could be. So the first thing I always tell all staff, agents, county, state, everyone is who is your go-to team? So create a team in your county of people that you know that you can rely on for if an oh no happens, that they can either get you additional information that you need or can help push out information that you have that you want to make sure that they receive. And then a couple of people that are going to help you make decisions. And so that may be some static families, that could be a couple of livestock families, it could be a vet within your county or your community, even your disaster management person or your emergency manager in your county is a fantastic person to kind of have on deck. And you don't necessarily need to meet with these people regularly. It's not a committee you formally need to establish, but that you touch base with them on a fairly regular basis, or at least let them know, hey, we're going into achievement days. If something happens, is it okay if I give you a call so that we can go through some options or you can help me think through things? Because when we talk about making those giant mistakes, it's rarely that we took too long to respond and that caused additional mistakes. A lot of times the mistakes happen because we act too quickly and maybe go down the wrong path or make a split-second decision that isn't the best decision that we could have made. And so for things like weather, fire, those a lot of times emergency management will take over, our first responders will take over. So then it's just really about clear messaging around with our families, but making sure we have those systems in place as well. So if you've got that team, that core group, they can help you explore options. So in the event that something happens at your county fair, how will you communicate with your families? Maybe use the Band app. Maybe you have the massive like group text mess option. Maybe it would even be an email, or maybe you would pull them all to one central location. And it's not a plan that you need to share with your families ahead of time by saying, okay, if there's a disaster, everyone come to the 4-H building. But that you know, yep, that's where I would have it. So it's one less thing you have to decide on if there is an oh no or a problem that you have to get through. The next thing to note or to think about is who would be my calls outside of my small group. So outside of that committee you kind of establish or that group of backers that you're going to have, who else should I get involved in this? I promise you, no one in our state office will ever be mad at you if you call at midnight or 1 a.m. with an emergency. No one is ever going to get mad at you for that. So if you have an animal that passes away at your fair and you just don't know what to do, please call. I may be a little groggy, but I promise I will answer and then we will get through it. And so then those people, our state staff, can always help you reach out directly and get in contact with Board of Animal Health, or we need to get the Public Health Department on board. We can certainly do that too. So let us help lighten that load for you. Don't feel that you have to handle it all by yourself. You're more than able to. We all know you're fully competent and you have everything under control, but we're just always here to help. So I hope you kind of keep that in mind too with us. Some of the examples that we've had, I've unfortunately been a part of 3 different counties that were hit with tornadoes during their county fair. I don't know how that happens, but I just bring bad weather. Luckily, no personal injuries happened at those times, but all 3 were handled vastly different. And so I learned from each of those experiences of, oh, we need to better plan on this, or, oh, okay, now we need to better plan here because this got fixed. So whether it's tornadoes, it's fires, it's missing judges, who's your group that you're going to go to help you make those decisions so you don't have to make them on your own? So as we talked about a little bit of those oh-nos and those panics, I know one of them is always going to be animal health issues. So I figured this is a great little way that we can refresh just what is the plan if we have health issues? Because as we know, in the past 10 years, we have had PEDV in hogs, constant awareness of African swine fever, and then of course we've got RHDV2 in rabbits and highly pathogenic avian influenza in the birds, and now unfortunately in the dairy cattle. So it's probably going to be a regular occurrence that every year or every couple of years, we're going to have to kind of deal with some form of disease outbreak or guideline on our shows. So the important thing to remember for you and for families is that 4-H's role within all of this is that the North Dakota State Board of Animal Health is the final authority in all decisions, recommendations, and restrictions on exhibitions in North Dakota. Right now, we're kind of focused on poultry and dairy because of HPAI, but Board of Animal Health is the absolute final authority. So luckily for us, but kind of unluckily at the same time, we will never have to make the difficult decisions. They will be made for us, and then we will just have to be able to communicate with them. So our goal is that we're going to help county agents, fair superintendents, exhibitors, volunteers who facilitate some of these exhibitions, prioritize health and safety for everybody that's involved. That's our responsibility of doing those things within the guidelines of what's been given to us from Board of Animal Health, because we have to follow what they've got. So a couple of things that just reminders for HPAI as we come into fair season. We have an event restriction map through Board of Animal Health. Right now, there's no restrictions in place. There are a lot of resources on the Defend the Flock website on the USDA's website. And then, of course, you have a phenomenal NDSU team. Miranda, Mary, Dr. Succa, myself, we are more than happy to help you answer any questions that you might be getting regarding HPAI. I know if you were on the disaster team call a few weeks ago, we are learning daily about its effects with dairy cattle and how that may play into our summer or any exhibitions that might be taking place around dairy. And so we'll keep you up to date as absolute best as we can with what we know. And the what ifs. So what happens if we have some restriction that comes into place? This is the same as it was last year. So you can take the avian influenza fear and put it on a back burner. Option 1, you can postpone and hope for better weather. We're going to postpone the show and hope that it was maybe an isolated case within your community that caused the restriction, and that we can still hold your show a little bit later. Option 2 is we can offer a virtual show. It's already set up for you. It's still set up from last year. So if there's a last minute restriction, we've got you covered. So don't worry about poultry at this point. We've got plans. We have that in coverage. So just a reminder on how does Board of Animal Health determine restrictions around a certain species? And we'll use poultry again as the example. So if a producer notices an unexplained illness or some death in their birds, that's step one. Then they notify the veterinarian or an animal health officer. They collect samples. The samples are submitted to the diagnostic lab. The diagnostic lab determines if, yes, they're positive for either H5 or H7. And then once the diagnostic lab confirms it, the USDA posts it on their website. So until the USDA posts it, nothing is official. So we follow only the USDA in terms of releasing information on any restrictions that may have or any confirmed cases. That will always come from USDA. So if you think there might be some cases in your county, I will not have any more information than you will until the USDA officially posts it. And then we know if there will be any restrictions that go into place. And so some things I want to remind you of, because looking at your fears, there are a lot of the same fears that I have walking into state fair every year or some of the regional shows or county events. I promise nothing you ever will have done or could do has ruined a child's 4-H career. I promise that's never going to be the case. You are not the dumbest person they have ever met. I've had that yelled at me twice. I try to think that that is not the case. Your job is not to destroy the hopes and dreams of young people everywhere. No one actually believes that. I love that meme or t-shirts I've seen that say, "I'm sorry for what I said during calving season." I think we need to have just stickers that say, "I'm sorry for what I said during county fair or achievement day." Our families greatly appreciate everything that we do. We just don't always feel that that's the case, but we know that what we do makes a huge impact in the lives of their kids, and in the 4-H program. And they know that too. It's just, again, we're kind of in a pressure cooker sometimes. And so sometimes they can kind of forget that. So I want you all to know going into county fair season that you're absolutely fantastic. You're the hardest working people in extension during this time of year, and that you're super intelligent and you can manage all these situations. You're more than able to do that. We just have to have kind of confidence in our own work as we get through it. So with that, I'd love to answer any questions that we didn't cover, anything I can help you with. Or if you want to see those 4-H online reports, we can go into that too.
I would like to go back to your comments about tornadoes.
Yes.
Does anyone here on this call have any guideline for what to do when a livestock show or horse show encounters bad weather? And I'm thinking like athletics department for the high school must have guidelines about lightning strikes within so many miles.
Does anybody have parameters that they currently use on that? If not, I highly suggest getting those parameters, asking for a copy of what North Dakota High School League uses for weather parameters. And of course, that depends on if your arena is covered or not covered, or where you exactly plan to have some of those things. I tend to be of the mindset the minute we hit the warning notification, that postponements become a real factor. When there's watches, we know, right, it's all the ingredients, but they're not necessarily combined to form anything yet. But when we hit that warning, they are there and it is starting to kind of manifest and take place. So if there is, say, a severe thunderstorm watch in your area, continue on cautiously. But the minute it hits warning, again, pulling that group together to really look at what's the outlook. Are we in the path that something may be coming our way? And then probably most importantly is how fast can your response time be for the activity that you have planned? So if it's a static activity where, if God forbid something terrible were to happen, families can just drop and go. that's a really quick response time. Something like a horse show where you'd need to stop, put horses back in stalls. The families would want to untack them, would need to put the tack down, would need to close up the stall. That's a pretty slow response time if something needed to happen quickly. So if it's some of those quicker responses, you can kind of move ahead a little bit more cautiously with the activities as scheduled. But when it's those warnings and it's going to be something that families would need a little bit more guidance or heads up on, then most of them are very understanding if you're postponing.
Thank you.
Samantha,
Yeah,
like thought or question, I guess, I don't even know, like for our county as I'm saying this, but you had said something to reach out to like local high schools or schools in general, but would fairgrounds or like the fair boards have things in place already that like agents could reach out to? As far as emergency responses and things like that, you know, I think that they would be a good resource to kind of put plans in place as well. That's all my thoughts.
absolutely. Good
What
idea, Katie.
facility you're using for your achievement days for things like that.
Yeah. They certainly would have some guidance, I'm sure, in their insurance policies on
Right.
what they need to say or what they need to have in place. Sometimes the fair boards come to us and go, hey, there's an emergency. What are we going to do? Because we're extension and we know everything all the time.
Yep.
But no, that's another really good place to go because they may have specifications on like sites, evacuation sites or things that
Just another thought for
we
people.
have. Yeah. Well, that's a really good thought. Other questions, needs, things you want to ask of all the super experienced people on the call?
For scrapies, so on that chart earlier, you had the USDA tag or that they need that identifier. So extension agent doesn't do any tagging of that. That is above us. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, you don't have scrapies tags laying around in a bag in your office. That would never be something that would be allowed. Families can reach out to their veterinarian or the Board of Animal Health to secure those tags. The other thing they can do is within their breed association, sheep more so than goats at this time is moving towards full flock scrapie kind of identification. So a lot of the breed associations are utilizing their scrapie number within the animal's tattoo. So they may not have a separate tag and tattoo. So they may not have a registration tattoo and a scrapie tag. The number can be a combination that would cover them for both in that tattoo. But families will know that they can reach out to their breed association to get clarification if their tattoo covers that. But no, definitely not one that you need.
Thank you.
Sam, I had a question on, I run like the fair entry show order for
Yeah.
livestock.
Mhm.
And so last year, it always lumps together any registered, say we'll use swine, for example, or beef.
Okay.
It doesn't break them into breed groups. And so I guess I was hoping this year I could because I ran into a pickle last
Mhm.
year. So that's, I don't know, it's probably gonna take forever to figure it out, but I didn't want to
Nope.
waste anyone's time, but.
Go into when you log into fair entry at the top on that black bar where it says hierarchy, show, results, all of those things. There's a title that says breaks. And if you hit breaks, you can go into that swine show and then there's a option button that you can click to break them by sex or by breed. And you just need to click the breed button and it'll do it for you.
do I have to click on each class? Cause,
Nope, so go to, as
okay,
you're
so I'm
going,
in fair entry and
Yep.
let's, okay, I'll click on 4-H swine.
yep,
Yep. Then it tells me to click on a division.
yep, so like your breeding class.
Yep, swine breeding.
Yep,
Maybe I should. Yeah, then it's making me wanna click on a class.
no, you don't have to click on a class.
Okay, click here for information on breaking your classes.
Yep, go through that step guide. And if you still get stuck at the end of this, Sarah, we'll find a way for you to share your screen and we'll go through it.
Okay.
But I promise we can do that. We can break it by breed. Any other pieces for the good of the order, or things that people are concerned about or need to see?
Well, I just want to thank everybody for coming to our webinar Wednesday. I know it's a little after 12, so I want to be respectful of everybody's time. But I think Sam said she would stay on for a few minutes afterwards if y'all want to ask any other questions. But thank you for coming, and we'll come back to webinar Wednesdays in September. Bye, everyone.